everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this session, this masterclass on packaging your film for success. I'm very pleased to be able to introduce Alex Walton from Bloom. Please give him a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. We're going to talk through a whole sort of range of things related to packaging, influences that go into kind of the analysis day that I might have in terms of packaging, how you put things together. So if you want to jump in at any point with questions, please jump in at any point. There's absolutely no sort of strict order to this. Do you want to put it down a little bit? So please jump in. But my name's Alex Walton. I have been working in international distribution, sales, packaging for nearly 20 years. I'm originally from the UK. I'm now based in California and LA. And I've worked on probably well over 100, 150 films in terms of putting films together for cinema, and cinema specifically as well, which we'll touch on as we go through as well. But some of the films that I've worked on range from Woody Allen's Match Point to Scorsese's Shutter Island, the Coen Brothers, No Country for Old Men, End of Watch. Anyway, some of the films that you see on the screen. I run a company now that I began 2.5 years ago called Bloom. And Bloom is a production, finance, and distribution company. So my partner is a producer who's fully talent-facing and physical production-facing. I run the distribution organization in terms of licensing foreign rights around the world, to manage risk, and packaging movies, which we do together. So we've worked on films like The Nice Guys, which was a film that was released this summer with Warner Brothers, and it was released locally here through a company called Italia through the Middle East, with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. Shane Black directed it and wrote it. The Sea of Trees, again, was with Italia here locally, and is Matthew McConaughey, directed by Gus Van Sant. We played in the Cannes Film Festival main competition in 2014-15. Then we've just wrapped George Clooney's Suburbicon, which he's directed. It's a Coen Brothers script. With Matt Damon, Julianne Moore, and a collection of interesting other actors. We just wrapped last week that we shot in California. Again, we wrap, we're just in the post-production in the sort of director's cut phase of a film called Hostiles, which is Scott Cooper's new film, starring Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike. So we work on a wide, eclectic range of films from anywhere. Our films are probably predominantly European or American based. We work on films between $5 to $70 million in value or in production value. So a very wide range of films with first-time filmmakers, films with experienced filmmakers. And one thing we don't work on is Transformers, big visual effect-driven films, not necessarily because we can't, but just because that's the scale of those for the independent marketplace is much harder. So this is what our expertise is in films of, for very specific audiences, and that's what we're, I think the main thing for me in terms of packaging is you have to be aware immediately whenever you read a screenplay, whenever you begin to address a film, And the reason why I wanted to get into film, in fact, was because I thought that the film industry was always something interesting for me. I studied film, but the sales process I thought was a crucial part, obviously, in any business that you're going to get into. And originally I thought, there must be, I tried to find a way, there must be people who sold films because I liked films, for the philosophy that there's no point in making something unless you know how to sell it, and therefore you know who your audience is. And I think that's a critical point of packaging. If you don't know who your audience is, you should really reconsider why you're making the film anyway. And there's obviously many, many reasons to make films, not just for commercial success as well. There are many, many reasons, but you need to know what your goals are and how you'll reach those goals. So for me, like thinking about, say my life specifically in terms of if I'm making a film for $5 million, I have the opportunity to have a far smaller target. If we're making a film for $50 million, my target needs to be much wider, and other things need to come into it to justify that as well. So I just wanted to give you a breakdown, and you'll see there's quite a lot of information here, but it gives you the opportunity to understand, maybe you do already, but just some statistics, which is in the things that we're looking for. We're always looking first and foremost for material that can play in cinemas around the world. So not specifically for one region, we're looking films for the worldwide audience. So the worldwide audience is a near $40 billion market. That's cinema only. That's not including DVD or any of the other rights. So it's a big business. The film business is a big international business. You can see here how it's broken up. Obviously, there are emerging markets and there are very established markets. The American market is still the leading market and the most mature. Other markets throughout the world, there are still growing markets. I would say the Middle East is still a interesting, growing market as well. A number of Asian markets, a number of Eastern European markets, and a number of Latin American markets are still growing as well. China, obviously growing faster than anywhere. So then, looking at the different genres that break down any film worldwide that go into that box office, the largest and most accessible genre is the action genre that plays across borders better than any. Built obviously predominantly through studio films, but star-driven action films or visual effect-driven action films play through Asia, the Middle East, Europe, America, so play wider than any other. And this just gives you can see through the charts kind of how that is broken up by different genres. And interesting how the action genre here is by far, it's about half of the entire box office, but it's from one of the fewest groups of films, meaning they make more per film. Then this gives you a little bit of breakdown in terms of the different genres, where things play better throughout regions in the world. For example, action movies play extremely well everywhere, but if you look at them pound for pound against other films in Asia, they play extremely well through Taiwan, Thailand, all of those smaller Southeast Asian markets. Drama obviously is very locally made often, but particularly plays well through Europe. Particularly plays well where art house cinemas are still, art house cinema circuits are still very vibrant, and in fact have been re-put together as well now, like territories like Italy. Drama plays very well. International drama plays very well. Horror plays especially well in Mexico, for example. but through Latin America. Obviously America, the UK, has got a good audience for it as well, but places like Australia, horror doesn't work at all. So there's very particular, so we in terms of putting things together, we need to understand the different, ways that we can monetize films in different areas in the world. Comedy, everyone makes local comedies, so comedy is a really, really hard genre to play really well, but if you have a great film, and obviously that's a very general thing, if you have a great film, whatever the genre or type of film it is, then you've got more chance to play. But locally, everyone makes local comedies, which is predominantly why probably less comedies get made, but less comedies break out. But when they break out, they can play extremely well. I picked a couple of case studies, just mainly these are films that fit into the realm of my expertise, if you like, in terms of all of these films are sub 60 million in budget. Most of them, apart from Deadpool and Me Before You, were set up independently rather than through studios. But I just thought it was interesting, some of the things that you could pick out, like Deadpool obviously, is a huge property that became very successful worldwide, really with no exceptions. Silver Lining Playbook, you can see how the comedy and drama was a good combination. However, in Asia, that's very hard to translate, that kind of comedy. Like in Japan, which supported, you can see the breakdowns of most of them. Japan is a bigger world market, but in Japan that film didn't exist. A period drama like Imitation Game, obviously the UK, because it's a local story with local stars, overperforms things like that, but Europe in general overperforms things like that. But Japan is interested in those stars, and in fact, someone like Benedict Cumberbatch has actually a real footprint through parts of the world like Asia, through Sherlock Holmes, so that made that film more accessible around the world. Room was beyond anything. It was an incredibly hard film to put together. And, like all of these films, the hustle and determination of a producer to get that made, to get a difficult film made, was really impressive. And it was made through a variety of kind of subsidy-based financing. And it was a very hard film to pre-sell, as in to finance before it was made. And they made a very, very good film. And it played impressively, especially through, Europe, where dramas like this will play very well. So they would have been very targeted, and they sold it to a studio for most of international, who were able to really, to get the best out of that film, and it became an award-driven film, which obviously was the goal, was the dream. Me Before You, I think is probably the most interesting film this year. That and Deadpool to some degrees is two big breakouts, but Me Before You has no stars. It's not driven by a director. It's driven by a book property. It was made for a relatively low price by a studio, is the kind of the only differentiating thing kind of in my life, but it's a independent, technically film, a low price film through a studio that played because the book was amazingly well known. Was the main sort of reason why that worked, rather than the stars. The stars helped, and the film was good. The production values were very strong, so it helped the film play. And I didn't specifically think about this, but one thing to look at as well, and certainly for me, and we can talk more about it as well, all of these are actually adaptations of books or comic books. And that wasn't intentional at all, but it's the best conversion from, in terms of having willing audience already through the book to film, it's the best conversion that you get in cinema. Any questions? Where does it fall in? It's probably, right now, it's probably one of the toughest films to make. Right now in the marketplace. So it's a genre film. So when I say genre, genre includes thriller. So genre is not just horror. Genre might be a thriller as well. So, and if you have the thrillers that are working are films like Taken, Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible, bigger action, bigger star-driven thrillers. And the reason why they're very hard at the minute is you need that bigger star, because thrillers are all based on, the box office for a thriller is not the same as a big visual effect driven, like Deadpool, for example, grossed far higher because it had this superhero action, visual effect, spectacle. A thriller like Taken, it does have a ceiling, if you like, although that's really great against the price it was made for. It has a ceiling. They're mainly made for DVD, and the DVD market all over the world is falling. So again, another thing in terms of packaging your film, you need to be conscious of the movements as well, because the film process is a 2-year process from green light to delivery. Hopefully it's much less, but it's virtually a 2-year process. So trends change, industries change. So if you're making a film right now, the DVD market is not going to be better in 2 years' time. Hopefully the VOD market is going to be better in 2 years' time. But that's why thrillers aren't getting made as much. And certainly independently, thrillers aren't getting made as much.
You're talking about how we do packaging for films based on the genre. So how exactly would you differentiate the packaging for an action film and probably drama on the other hand? How would you differentiate the packaging for the two kinds of films?
I think if you have an action film, again, on both sides of films, you're looking for a star, if you like, a star who's relevant to that space. On an action film, you're probably going to be risking a younger actor as well, but you'll want to have a name who's recognizable on a poster. In a drama, again, you'll want the same. However, for a film that you're looking to win awards, the most important thing for me is the filmmaker. That's what, and obviously in terms of making a film is an unbelievably hard thing to do. Having the right producer, the producer who's got a track record in delivering, a director who can elevate material from what it is on the page. It's an extremely hard thing to do. You look at Wolf of Wall Street recently, that was a film that it was really hard to make. It spent years and years in the packaging process. It had the best star, if you like, in the world at the end, but still a lot of people, say within the industry, and it was sold independently, a lot of people weren't convinced that the film could work. But as soon as the film opened and you saw what Scorsese had done, it was obvious. I mean, the film, as soon as it opened, it was like, this is going to be a roller coaster. So, I think that if you're setting a drama up for a specialized market, you're thinking of maybe awards, you're thinking of festivals. The director, I think, is the premium thing that any festival around the world looks for. So would be the different things that I'd be thinking of. Sorry, you had a question over.
Hi, you were saying that novels and comics is a successful, adaptations from novels and comics are a successful way of bringing films to screen. last year at the Oscars, 4 out of the 5 Best Adapted Screenplay nominees were based on real life, and the 5th was based on pre-existing characters. And I just wonder if you want to comment on real life as a source of screen inspiration and its success in the US and elsewhere.
I think the true story sell in any story, in any genre, is one of the most compelling things, like human reactions, if you like. People like to go to true stories. However outside of their life or, gives them the ability to strive forward. That all of those kind of things for human reactions. So I think it's an amazing sales tool. And it's something that we can talk about as well, but like having distinguishing elements, because we're not always going to get Leonardo DiCaprio. We're not always going to get a book that's really well known, or even an original screenplay that's fantastic. We're not always going to get Martin Scorsese. All of those things. We have to try and compile the elements as best we can. They're not always going to maybe be of that level. Having a true story, as part of your package is a really great element to engage audiences and therefore engage financiers, engage distributors, engage the sort of the pre-sale package that is in the process that you have to go through before you get your film made. It's a great element to have. So that, and having a book as well that's well known with an inbuilt audience, any type of brand, if you like, and I'd call a true story an element of a brand. So I am in terms of when, and certainly for me, like in our company, all we're looking for is provocative material. We're looking for material that can cut through into a marketplace anywhere. Something that's going to, we're not making films like Transformers, we're not making Batman. So however, our films are going to be playing against some of those type of films. So why would anyone go to see one of our films rather than that film? So it's got to be something that, press can write about, critics can get behind, ideally, and that's obviously what we're always striving to make, good movies that critics can engage with. But trying to make something that audiences anywhere can really engage with, and obviously sometimes they engage more in Korea on something, sometimes they engage more in Spain on something. So we're making things that we're trying to provoke reactions anywhere around the world. So that for me always begins with the story, always begins with the material, and that can be in any genre, and we will look at anything in terms of our process. And I think anyone in my position, anyone in studios, people look at everything. They look at everything that comes to them, because you never know when a great story can come. You don't know where it's going to come from, what type of producer from wherever. No one wants to miss a great story. You read the press about how all the people that missed Twilight or missed Hunger Games, they're really hard things to see. Like on page, people with extreme experience in the film business missed those things because they were very challenging. I think The Hunger Games is one of the most challenging films that has been made, certainly whilst I've been in the business. I think it was one of the brave, to make a film about kids killing kids. I mean, it's a huge no for most studios, for one, which is why they all said no. So anyway, finding a good story, wherever that might come from, whether that's a newspaper article, a book, an original screenplay, is the first thing that we're looking for. A concept within that, whether it's a drama that appeals in a human way, someone struggling to overcome something, grieving, different types of human emotions are always things that we look for. Concepts, say in a thriller, you know, we're looking, for example, at a thrill at the minute, which I thought was really cool, about a man who gets stuck in a black cab in London. I was like, that's a great idea. Like Phone Booth was a great idea. You know, looking for ideas. So looking for, you know, hopefully big ideas that can, you know, carry a 90-minute, 100-minute story. Again, not easy to sustain an idea for as long as that. So looking for good ideas and being clear about the genre that they're in, because having a dramedy like we spoke about, like Silver Lining Playbook, amazing film, and if you didn't have David O. Russell directing that film, that would have been a really, really hard film to make. Like if you didn't have a man of that kind of experience to make like in fact, The Nice Guys is a film that we made this summer, or released this summer, to make a film that had, I don't know how many people saw the film, but it's got a real independent edge to it. It's a very alternative type of comedy as well. To actually do that in an action way is a really hard blend. There's very few directors who actually really pull that off. So anyway, being clear about your genre, whether that's a drama or a thriller, being very clear about where the material sits, because having two tones is very hard to balance, and certainly distributors, once you get to that point, distributors find that very hard to digest. So I'm making a film at the minute actually, which is has like drama and tension and romance, and people who have found it hard to like engage with the material, we've managed to cast it very well with Julianne Moore and Ken Watanabe and some interesting international stars. That people can obviously see that with their experience, that's one way to get over this mixed tone. But the soul of the film is music. So like our belief is that the music that we're creating around the story, Julianne Moore plays an opera singer, you know, that will be something that can really propel the romance and the tension. So we're trying to navigate it in that way. So then distinguishing factors, which we spoke about, but distinguishing factors for me are true stories, books, brands of any way. You know, for example, we're making a film which is based on a slice of life, if you like, of the life of Al Capone. You know, that for me, you know, he's a gangster that everyone all over the world knows. So that is a brand that will be useful, I believe. It will be useful for me maybe now when we're putting the film together. Stars, actors like playing, you know, true stories. They're drawn to that kind of material, which we found. We managed to cast Tom Hardy in the role. So that worked. But I also think when we actually make a good film, we've got a good actor, hopefully we'll have a performance that people want to write about, but people will also want to write about a true story about a man who they knew about, who was good or bad, people are fascinated by. So that's a distinguishing factor for me. It's as close to a brand, if you like, as I can probably reach at my sort of the budget level that I have. You know, I'm not going to be making a Mickey Mouse movie, you know, as in a movie that has sort of internationally large brands. Like, for example, there's a film that's playing here called The Founder. You know, that's a branded film, technically, because McDonald's is a worldwide phenomenal brand, and that will hopefully mean that people might be interested in going to that film to understand more about how that came around, which is not probably really what the film's about, but it helps get people in. So always trying to find distinguishing factors that, you know, and that film maybe is a good example, because Michael Keaton isn't going to get everyone into a cinema, but that and the idea of it being a bit about McDonald's that people can write about, press around the world will write about, which is free media. That is an interesting thing to help get an audience into the film. Gives you a bigger chance of getting an audience into the film.
Hello, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Here. What you're describing sounds like all the factors to convince people that there's low risk versus a potential gain in what is still a very lucrative global market if you have an appealing film and you get it into the right specific markets within that global market. So all these factors play together in terms of ameliorating risk, but still there are many films that don't get made, many scripts I should say. There are films that get made, I don't know if the UK government is still channeling about $1 million to writer-directors to make films that don't have any appeal and don't get a return on revenue, but they used to. And I think my question is this: despite all the presentations I ever hear in any of the books I read about financing and packaging, they miss the most important part in one sense, which is the point at which the money changes hands. And my question is, in pre-sales, when is it that the point comes where you've put together the package, that the money goes into the producer's account to actually begin production? And contracting is also based around PP, principal photography, as well. And so that's my question. Could
so your question is a couple of things. One is about financing and sort of tax incentives, it seems, which is a whole other aspect in terms of some of the piece of the pie. But your question is, when we pre-sell, the real question is what happens to that contract and how it goes into the producer's pocket.
When does the money go into the producer's pocket to do the actual
Well, I suppose
production?
for one, it doesn't go into the producer's pocket. It goes into the production budget.
Well,
so, so specifically what happens is the Tom Hardy Al Capone story, for example, we started pre-selling that. Tom Hardy was attached on the 1st of November. We started pre-selling it on the 5th of November at a marketplace, like an established marketplace called the AFM, the American Film Market, which happens every year in November in Santa Monica. And it's thousands of buyers, in fact, from hundreds of territories around the world. And it's non-stop meetings, presentations on, say for me specifically, I'm meeting people on that film and a couple of other films that we're building. But they're meeting people from hundreds of companies, considering hundreds of films. So, but then I licensed that film in Germany during this event. We'll then contract it. That will take a couple of months. We're shooting the film in April next year. So the contract that I license will become part of the borrowing facility for the film. So my contract, on top of all of that, from what we can value a film for, I say, for example, if I say that film is worth $10 million, a bank will value my estimates based on my experience, specifically my track record. They would value that $10 million at X. And the contract that I have with an established German distributor, they would value, depending on the track record of that distributor, they would value at, let's say they value at 100%. So the money then goes into a collection account. They pay a deposit. It sits in a collection account that all the parties, all the business of the film, the actors, the director, the producer, everyone is part of this collection account. So it gets paid through a transparent and organized system that's contractual. But the money doesn't get released into the production budget for spending until the film is closed, until the film is bonded in that structure until the film is bonded, and the bond is an insurance bond. So that needs to happen. You need to hit a agreed price before that money's released. So the money is safe to the distributor. The distributor has never lost, if you like, that money or paid it into a facility until that is complete. And then they don't pay the rest of the money until they take delivery of the film. But the bank has covered their delivery payment.
Thank you.
I hope that makes sense. Then the elements of packaging, when we're looking to put things together, the things that we consider and the things that I think we all should consider, beyond the genre and the material that we're trying to make, the other distinguishing factors that help you on your process is, firstly, for example, having a script that you're developing, hiring a producer with experience. And that's obviously not always the case. And some of you as first-time producers, not to put you off from being first-time producers, because everyone has to start, but that hustle, it's a hard, hard job with a lot of constant hurdles, in fact, constant letdowns, constant changes in direction. Having a producer to partner with you, or for me, finding material and then finding a producer who has a track record of delivering films, putting the whole business together. It's hundreds of contracts and hundreds of people, and someone who has experience of putting that together. We look for that. It also, when we're releasing a film or when we're pre-selling a film, having a producer who has a track record is a very good thing. For example, the Tom Hardy film, again, is produced by the man who produced Reservoir of Dogs and Pulp Fiction. They're relevant credits to the type of film that we're trying to make, and that's a good thing. It's a good way that the audience that I'm trying to reach, whether that's distributors or cinema goers, they can understand that. If that's on a poster, they can understand that as well. So it's a good thing to consider when you're putting things together. Choosing a director, we've touched on bits of this already, but a director, and not always someone of, choosing a first-time director is one of the hardest things to pull off. Again, because it's a very hard job, it's a very hard thing to tell a story in any way. To visualize it is incredibly hard. So having a director of experience, and I don't even mean feature film experience, if you're making a film with someone, have them make a short film to start with. Make a very, very, as in don't overspend on a short film, but have them tell a narrative and visualize a narrative before you go and make a feature film with them, where you're going to come through not only a hard process, but a very stressful process as well together. So see how they behave in a short film process as well to help them tell that story. Famous example recently of this is Whiplash. Whiplash, really good screenplay because we've seen the film, so we know that screenplay was good, but they couldn't get that financed. He was a first-time filmmaker. That people, not that they didn't believe in him, but that's a really challenging thing to pull off, to sell to a financier, to sell to a producer or distributors around the world. So he made a short film. The short film was great. The short film was then used to raise financing, to sell the feature film to distributors around the world. So it was a very useful tool that they smartly put together. And obviously, that director then, he's made Whiplash, great film, but to make La La Land was really hard for him as well because it was a bigger budget and it's a musical. And musicals they're not even on the charts that I showed because musicals are not really working anywhere. But he's made something that, hopefully we'll all see tomorrow, which I've not seen yet, but I hear amazing things about. Every review of it's amazing. So it gives you the chance to transcend. So you know, and you're not going to find someone like him every day, but be smart about the directors, be smart about, you know, trying to find people with a track record. You know, we've just made a film, a gangster movie, again, a Japanese, a Yakuza movie, with a director, and he's never directed an English language feature before, but he's directed a number of films in Denmark. And his last film was something that we found at a festival, and we're really engaged. It's been released in America late this year. A film called Land of Mine. And that film made real sense to us of what we wanted to do with this story. And what we wanted to do with this story was different. This film is called The Outsider. And it's a script that's been around for 8 years, and people have tried to make it in different ways, but what we wanted to do with it was something quite particular, and he enabled us to, well, we felt at the time, to realize that vision. And, you know, we'll see. It wrapped last week, so, but trying to find a director who matches your material with experience, that doesn't have to be having made a feature, but a first-time director is going to be the hardest journey you go on. So being aware of that, you know, and trying to prepare for that as well. If it is a first-time filmmaker, we make at least probably 2 films with first-time filmmakers every year, and, you know, are committed to that. But we've felt confidence in them, and we protect them, you know, down the line in the process with other people of experience around them to help them. So. In terms of building value for your film.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I had a quick question for these are all films that are made in English, that have really high budget, but for filmmakers from the region who, you know, we don't have $20 million. If we get 1 million, we're really happy. So I was wondering, how do you think these films, and if there's an interest in the international market for foreign films that are made in Arabic, and how can they be sold? And there is, provided it's good, and maybe genre films, if you have a good, I don't know, Arabic horror film or a good Arabic thriller, can that cross to be sold in different territories in the world, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the same, whether it's a $20 million film or a $1 million film. I think in terms of understanding your target might just be making a film in Arabic for an Arabic audience, even one territory within that. However, that's not a bad thing. At least you know your audience. You just need to make sure, if you're making it for one territory, that you don't spend $20 million on it, because it'll, you know, will be a much harder thing to recoup. But I think telling a provocative story locally, obviously you make it good, then of course it has the chance to, you know, to be seen, be discovered, come to the Dubai Film Festival, come to the Toronto Film Festival. So it gives you the chance of having a life outside of the region, but just making it for the right reasons and the right target audience locally. I think it's the same process, if you like. And I think right now there's a bigger ability for foreign language films, if you like, local language films to travel around the world. There's a lot of companies who are investing heavily in local film, like a company like Netflix, you know, is investing very heavily in feature films in local territories to build their subscription fan base. But also, you know, I'm from the UK, and the UK television never ever played foreign language films that were subtitled because the audience didn't like subtitles. Then Swedish, Scandinavian in fact, in general, that region started making really great TV, so they started playing that on British terrestrial TV stations. They were hugely successful, so they remade them, they blah blah blah. Now, foreign language films on terrestrial TV are playing really well, not just in the UK, but around the world. So I think the moment, you know, I think it's the audience, a larger audience, is more accessible than anywhere. And I think on that as well, telling films from this region, if you like, an Arabic story, you know, if it's I think the region itself has an international interest for many, many reasons. But telling good local human stories, I think the rest of the world are going to be interested in understanding the real human stories from the region. I think it's a really good time for that, whether that's TV or film as well.
Would it take it into, going through that route, trying to take a local story into the international one, would that be in the, you say in some places they don't like the subtitle, but would be different means, or you take the Arabic story and make it in the English language? Would that approach would be a better?
Sorry, the question is...
To take a local story and produce it in English. Would that be a better than making an Arabic story into the Arabic language and try to go into the international market with it?
It's depending on what your target is. If your ambition and the scale of your film is bigger than the region can hold, if you like. If the value of your film, for example, if you feel that the production budget needs to be $10 million, but you can only recoup 3 from your local region, then you have to look at ways to try and tell a wider story when you're committed to that. So you need to make smart decisions in terms of, again, director, the elements attached that can be more accessible. Maybe there's a role where you could put an American in. Maybe there's a role where you could put someone from you could adapt the screenplay to accommodate that. And then, it might give you a wider chance from a pre-financing or even a finished film success scenario. So, yeah, I think you have to pivot at that point. And obviously, the reality is you do that and people complain locally that it's not in Arabic or it's not, so I'm not going to go and see it. Why do I want to see an American story about a local issue? So you have to, we have a film about the life, in fact it's about the emergence of a incredibly talented football player called Pelé. And we made it in Brazil, but we made it in English with Brazilian actors. And locally, that's been very, very hard. Because it's a Brazilian story and it feels like a local Brazilian, in fact it is a local Brazilian story, but it's in English, not in Portuguese. And for the international marketplace, obviously, it's much better than it's in English. However, for the local marketplace, it's just more challenging to make sure that we can be, we can reach that local audience when they initially are like, well, this is not a local film because it's in English, it's made by Americans or wherever the producers are from. So you have to be conscious of those challenges as well, because you're going to face them.
Working with first-time filmmakers, and from the perspective of a filmmaker, it often seems impossible to go from successful short film to first feature film. Could you tell us a bit about some examples of first-time filmmakers you worked with and how you ended up working with them?
Yeah, happily. There's one specific at the minute that we're working with and they're 2 artists who created a fashion label. They were untrained fashion designers. They created their own fashion label and it became very successful. And they were always inspired by their love of film. So we developed a screenplay with them because they wanted to tell a story in film. So that prior experience made us feel confident that they were artists and could tell stories, and they curated fashion shows, and they were used to compiling lots of the elements that we need in film, from music, costume, production design. They were used to telling those stories, so it gave us confidence that they had a good chance, or a better chance, if you like, better experience, although they'd never made a feature film. So, for example, contradicting what I just said a moment ago of doing a short film, we didn't get them to do a short film because we had this inbuilt confidence that they would be able to deliver on their vision. So that's one example of something that we're working on at the minute. We made in fact we're putting together a film now, and we've licensed it around the world successfully already, and it's a just under a $20 million like suspense film, and we had in fact a cast that wasn't that well known, and a director that was a first-time filmmaker, and it's the elements that he's a guy called Otto Bathurst, and he was one of the original directors on Peaky Blinders. We did the first episode of Black Mirror. So he'd done really interesting TV, and in fact it was for me personally, this was about 18 months ago, and it was the first time that I've really been able to utilize the experience from television to film, because that many years ago that was a really bad pitch from me to film distributors. Was they haven't made a film before, but they've made ER, they've made as in when television was at that level, that wasn't a good pitch that they could create a good big visual story. But having Black Mirror, which is a 1 hour episode, or Peaky Blinders that had a real opinion, from haircuts to music, of making period drama accessible, that really people really engaged with that, even if they hadn't seen Peaky Blinders. The idea, and we showed them clips of it, because it hadn't played at that point. It hadn't played all over the world. It wasn't successful in America even at that point. So it connected the dots for them. So, to choose someone who doesn't have any prior experience would be, tremendously risky. But if they have short films, we always watch people's short films. Always. And there are great stories that are told in short film format that we all often things that, we go back to look at to find out how they've managed to interpret different stories.
Hello. Oh, that sounded loud. At what stage of the filmmaking do you enter? Do you hunt out stories that you find interesting, or do people approach you with a story that they want to tell?
Many different ways. We have relationships with producers that we really believe in. We believe in their tastes and things that they're doing. We also seek out filmmakers. For example, Land of Mine, we saw that film and wanted to know what he was looking to do next. So we met with him. It was only then that we shared one of our own screenplays with him. So, we will often track filmmakers to try and find, what area they're looking to work in, to find voices, if you like. But we get involved, we develop screenplays ourselves, from ideas or from books. So we get involved at every different stage, and often I get involved, once some of the elements are already in place. When a producer that might know me, or I might be recommended by someone else, might recommend that I would be a right fit for that material. So we get involved at many different early stages in the process.
When you say we, you're referring to your partner and you, or a bigger team? I mean, do you write?
We have a team of 12 people. So we's just the company. Any other questions?
Hello. What do you think of films that with sports theme? We've seen $1 Million Baby or Rocky, that makes it. But when it comes to the most popular sport, football, it's not the same.
They are really, really, I love them. Personally, I love Rocky. I even like Seabiscuit and films like that that are touching on a sport, like with a real human heart to them. So personally, I love them. They're really tough. I'll give you, even like on this slide, I was going to give you a sort of breakdown of some of the experiences that I'd had. But Rush was a sports movie. It is not a sports movie. However, it was categorized in the press, technically, and the audience. In fact, I think we made a mistake because the poster has men in sports clothing about a sport that isn't everyone's, it made it very male, if you like, rather than giving a wider access. But it's the sports movie is most popular in America, like historically, statistically. In fact, it's very popular in America, but that will be much more likely to be successful if it's a baseball movie or a local sport for them. But boxing is one that has often been, something that's worked. In international territories, really all over, sports movies are far harder. They've got a far worse track record. Germany, for example, they're not interested at all in sports movies. If you look at the evidence, but they're not interested in musicals either. And La La Land, if it's really good and it starts working all over the world and starts winning Oscars, I bet you lots of Germans will go and see it. So you make a good film again and you can cut through. And I think with Rush, we made a pretty good film. It played quite well in the Middle East actually as well, and probably partly because of Ferrari, which was a bit of a brand in it, and Formula One being well known here, it gave it more access. So there were a couple of markets in the world where it, as a sports movie, if you like, it was able to cut through, like Italy. It worked very well. The UK, it's a British story, so it worked very well in those markets. I think that's all we've got time for. So thank you very, very much for coming.